Meeting is now being recorded, so I think we've got everything we need. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the October meeting of the recovery team. It's great to see all of you as always, and thanks so much for your time. I think it's fair if I was to describe to people what the economic recovery team has been working on. I feel like we've very much had kind of like a dual stream approach where we've been focused both on the short-term responding as quickly as we can to what's going on the ground and being able to put our heads together and share information. That's certainly been very helpful for me from an advocacy point of view as I'm speaking with upper levels of government and being able to coordinate things at a staff level. So I think it's kind of been our one track. And then of course on the second track, some more longer term strategic thinking with our 4 priorities. I will tell you there was a report that came to City Council this past week kind of outlining what those priorities are and some of the initiatives that we're looking at. Got very favorable comments from council as well and from the community. So I think we're definitely on the right track with that, and that work's going to continue on. We're having meetings at a staff level in terms of getting all the foundational pieces in place for the working groups to be able to drive that work forward on each of our priorities. But I do very much feel that today is a little bit more back to the first track, which is really trying to get a lay of the land, understand how things are going, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that I can get that information and be able to be positioned well at a city level and also in my conversations with other levels of government as well. So you'll see on our agenda that the first thing we wanted to lead off with was just a sector level updates, a roundtable just to understand what those challenges are and how we can best respond and react to them. So I'm going to go around the Zoom screen this morning, if that's okay, just to kind of kick things off. Abba, you had sent a note, and I know you need to, you're going to have to leave early. So you sent a very comprehensive note, but I am wondering if you would be okay just kind of speaking to that, helping both myself and the rest of the group just to understand where things are at with the personal services sector.
Yeah, hi, thanks for that. Morning, everyone. I know the sun is out, which is lovely. Yeah, with respect to the personal service, it doesn't look very good, just because we are very much so personal, as the name implies. And so that in itself is a big factor. And so for us, we have been working diligently. I think hairdressers, beauty places, tanning places have been working to make sure that we're stringent and going above whatever guidelines that we usually do and COVID protocol. But I'm finding that there isn't the support in a couple of ways. So for example, funding. There are many funding streams. So if you happen to be a woman and a racialized group, you could do the RA3, but if you weren't, then you can't. And even the new funding through EdDev, beauty services weren't deemed tourism, even though I think that's interesting because often many hotels go linked to spas, or where do people go when they want to go somewhere? They will go get a treatment done. And I was told that, I don't know if it's EdDec, and maybe Donna or someone who is from there can answer to that question, said that they lobbied for retail, but I'm not sure, how come other things weren't lobbied for, or maybe other things were lobbied for, but they didn't get it. And so I think it just seems like, of all the places, we do have to have a lot of barriers, and we wear gloves all the time on the top, and we're always wearing masks. And so we are putting out that money, which means either we have to increase our prices, we have to pass it on to the consumer, or we have to close. And those are things that are happening. 2 spas closed in the West End. One had been in business for almost 8 years, and another one. And so those are the realities of what it is. And we do have loyal customers who we are, working with and working really hard. But even in these circumstances, especially since schools have started back, we have staff members who call that morning because their kid may have a sniffle. And I guess those things have been changing, the regulations and stipulations now. So maybe there's a little bit of wiggle room for that. But we're very much an appointment based. So now either we have to find somebody to cover that staff shift, or it's a client who may have an appointment that may take up more than an hour or a 2-hour block because they had several services. And so now we have 2 hours that we can't fill because we're appointment based. And then what do? We're still paying staff. We still want to support them and make sure that we give them their hours because they already also are feeling very angst about the whole situation. And that's it, so we need to continue having support through funding so that we can support the current staff through all the different things that are happening, and and also other models of income. What if we have a staff member, for example, who has a kid that's sick and they wait 5 to 8 days, which is what's happening currently, for a result. What do they do in those 5 to 8 days? They can't get EI, they don't get paid. So then what happens there? Is it some way that we can support businesses so that we can then extend some sort of a sick pay leave that we don't normally, past what we do, so that we can give them some sort of a bonus so that they feel like, okay, it's not so, so much tension in that point of view. And also just keep really messaging, like, yes, we're staying safe. Yes, we're doing safe stuff and we're doing small groups, but, restaurants, beauty people, we're doing the work, and I mean, I'm sure that maybe Tim could speak to stuff, but it was interesting. I was speaking to someone who worked in a restaurant and they were saying, for example, the mandate by cutting the hours, is that really an effective measure? Not only are you cutting the hours of staff, but they were in a place that was regulated. So in that control of the restaurant, they were able to make sure people stayed in their seats. They were able to make sure people stayed in their bubbles. They were able to monitor how much people were drinking to make sure that they didn't go home. And now you're saying, we're going to shut you off for 12. Where do they go now? Maybe they then cluster. Maybe they then go and they drink and there's no one minding it. So I just think some more thoughtfulness with respect to also consulting the people within the group before blanket statements are made. And can we start lobbying more for like what we did before? Can we have city-specific things? Does that have to apply to Kingston? Can we change things in a different way so that we are not affected and our businesses can be supported? I think that was mainly it. Just more funding, more lobbying, looking at childcare options for both staff and employees to help their staff, and just knowing that it's going to be a 2-year process. It's going to be a long road process, and winter is particularly hard on any year. And in this year, it'll be very interesting to see what happens when we get to April next year, how many people survive and how creative we can be to make sure that we can sustain
that. Thank you. That's excellent feedback. I'm going to make a couple of comments, but I do also want to open up the floor. If someone has an update and somebody wants to respond to that, please feel free. I want to allow for a free flow conversation or discussion. Your point on the funding is really interesting, because I'm going to guess that there probably are a number of tourists that would come to your establishment, and I thought that was the criteria. So that's interesting. I'll look into that, see if there's space to be able to expand that criteria. I know my last information was that there's still funding available, so they're actually trying to get it out the door, and so you would think that maybe there's an opportunity to be able to expand that criteria. Ian, I don't know if there's any comment you have on that. Has that come up in your discussions?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks a lot, Brian. Abba, actually, we did lobby the feds to try and include personal services as part of the packaging. Because I do know, one of the prime examples was the tattoo industry, and I'm sure that people travel from outside of Kingston to get artwork done by specific artists. And, from our office, our argument was that I'm sure that most personal service providers could show that 50 or 60 or even 70% of their revenue was generated through people traveling to the area for these services. Unfortunately, they had to pick sort of a category of NAICS codes, I believe, that fed into the hardest hit sector. And I'll say hardest hit because I know there's a lot of people that are hard hit. This being said, personal services are on our radar. So we're trying to find another way that if we can stimulate some sort of funding to support personal services, it might have to be something that we're looking at just locally as opposed to something provided by the feds. But it hurt my ears a little bit to hear that you didn't think we were fighting for you, because there was a lot of discussions in our organization specific to personal services.
I said, I don't know if you did. I didn't say you words. I said, I'm not sure.
No problem. Hey, we're live here, so I got to make sure we set the record straight. But on that note, one thing that I've been trying to broadcast openly as I'm talking to businesses is there are a lot of employees and employers in Kingston that offer benefit packages to their employees. And with all the considerations and concerns over mental health right now, I think right now is an excellent time for employers to be encouraging their staff to use those benefit packages to go out and get massages and get their dental work done and utilize our local resources to help make sure that the money is still flowing into our local businesses. So that's sort of the ad hoc thing that we're doing to try and support more people going in and getting work done that's safe and that's being offered through local businesses. So those are sort of the quick touch points on that. And there is still some funding left as part of the FedDev stream. unfortunately, the applicability of businesses won't change for this funding program. But like I said, we're looking at it. We're trying to develop a program that will be targeted to this specific sector because we know that there's a major need here, and we're just trying to figure out how to get some money to provide more support for professional services.
Thanks, Ian. I appreciate that. But I just would add to that is that, you know, the personal services is very large. So it's hair, it's beauty, it's tattoo, as you said. And like, those aren't covered necessarily by benefits. I think people who are mandated to their benefits to go do RMT type massages, they are doing that. It's like the facials, the manicure, pedicure, the haircut, the color. Those are the pieces that are being affected. And I appreciate that you guys are lobbying and looking for other stuff, but I just wanted to put it out there that that's a little bit of the frustration because we don't have like a TIO tourism board that's lobbying on our behalf, and we don't have a big retail committee that's lobbying on our behalf. So really, you know, it just is up to hoping that, you know, EdDex and other similar kind of things in different areas are lobbying for us and other people who may not fit into a bigger conglomerate or lobbying body.
For sure, and I'm more happy. I'm not sure of their full programming, but I know CFIB does great lobbying for business, independent business in Canada. So happy to connect you with representatives of that organization as well. And I'll lobby for you as well, okay?
Awesome. Thank you both. I see Craig has his hand up and then Allison, we can go.
Thank you, Worship. I just to echo Ian's comments, I can confirm I was involved in the negotiations with Donna and Shelley at Kingston ECDev for the FedDev programming. We did, I think, make a strong case to include everybody, including your sector. FedDev, again, I guess the challenge was that this was a program that wasn't just in Kingston, it was in other areas. You know, they were very prescriptive in what they wanted in terms of sectors, and they wouldn't budge. So rest assured, the city was also lobbying on your behalf, and we'll continue to be creative and push for all the businesses in Kingston.
Working on it, absolutely. Allison.
I just had a question in terms of the eligibility. Is there an option for personal service businesses to get the FedDev funding related to the retail portion of their business? Like Abba, I know you
No, you have to have 70% of your business coming from retail in order to get that. I asked that question as well. Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent feedback. Thank you. This is exactly the sort of thing that we need to bring up so that we understand exactly where the needs and the gaps are. Abba, I hear your point on childcare, and that's something that we've had a lot of discussions about the city, so we'll take that one back. The other piece that you mentioned is about like the city or the regional approach. I'm a strong advocate of that. I just am very wary of a blanket-wide measures across the province where, quite frankly, I think the situation in Toronto is quite different from the situation here in Kingston. I know that we've had those discussions around the public health table as well. And Chris, I know that Kieran has mentioned that as well. So certainly I will continue to push for city, specific, regional specific approaches where, we need to address things, but try to deal with the conditions that we're dealing with locally. Great feedback. Thank you very much for that, Abba. And I know that you can't stay for the whole meeting, so if you have to drop off at some point, I totally understand that, but really appreciate that. Thank you. Susan, I'm going to go to you next. Interested to hear just how the retail sector is going and any feedback or insights you can give us.
Sure. We've been doing all right. It's a fine balance between the operation of the shopping center and the staffing levels within the building. We're trying to be uniform in our approach to getting our hours back on track, but the reality is some people can't staff their stores the full hours. And so I think there's an understanding between the landlord and our tenants about what's realistic and what we can do and what we can't do, but we're all sort of heading towards the same goal. Business is fine, it's not great. And we were building, but we've stepped back a little bit. And in the step back, we've amplified all of our protocols again. And I'm not saying that we ever let them go, but we're just have security a little bit more visible, people have been amazing about wearing masks. It's the exception, not the rule, that people come into the building without masks. And I'm really pleased about that. And so many consumers are self-policing that. We really don't have to be as vigilant as we thought we would have to be, because customers are saying, hey, you forgot your mask. Oh, sorry, you know, that type of thing. So grateful to live in Canada, to live in Kingston. You know, it's, people are pretty much understanding. But the biggest challenge we have now is going into the holiday season, which, as you know, in retail is make or break for a lot of people. And I think with our hours, we can't compete with the Walmarts of the world and the Canadian Tires with their hours, and we will maintain a tighter hour. But the issue there is crowd control. We can't have too many people in the building. So there's the balance there of trying to figure out what our retailers can staff, and then making sure that we have enough hours for our consumers, that we don't have people coming in all at the same time. So I mean, that would be a nice problem to have. We don't have that problem, but we have to be aware. And the other thing that we've had to do, and I know all of you have done the same thing, is eliminate all of our holiday activities. And for us, it's heartfelt what we do at Christmas time, and it's been really challenging. We will continue to do some of our charitable work, but it'll be different. So I guess that's the long and the short of it. It's day to day. You almost feel, and I don't know how the rest of you feel, but you almost feel like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And we're just doing our best to keep everything moving forward. On the business side, as I represent the landlord of the property, it's been incredibly challenging with rents, with keeping people in the secret program, readjusting rents to ensure that retailers stay healthy. It's been a huge part of what we've been working on. It's been very consuming, and I'm fortunate. I work for a company who's been in partnership with retail to understand that they need help, and we need help, and we want to work together to make sure that we continue to move forward. But those are words. The actual workload has been daunting, to say the least. And I don't think that SECRA is going into October. I don't know at this point. We haven't heard anything, but that's full rents again, and some adjusted rents. And we're not there. We're not there. The business has not come back to that point. So as I said, it's day to day, waiting for the other shoe to drop, adjusting ourselves every day to new regulations coming into play. And but it's becoming more of a pattern for us.
Susan, thank you. That's great feedback. I know on the rent piece that there is now discussion. I can't speak to any details because I'm not looped in, but I know that there is discussion about what an additional rent relief program could look like. And I know that there was a lot of feedback about the last one, about the administrative burden that went with it and some other challenges. And so I'm hoping that we can make some progress there. So I appreciate that. You mentioned earlier about you felt that you were moving forward, but then a kind of a step back. Is the step back, is it a consumer confidence piece just with, with an uptick in cases, or is there anything else that you're seeing that's kind of driving that?
It was just the rise in the number of cases in the market. It's not complicated in that there's a quick reaction to it. And if I may speak to on the paperwork on the SECRA program, initially it was really interpreting that paperwork. Once we had that down, which took about 2 months and many tries and fails, the subsequent months went very well. So that's not a problem. So if they want to turn that corner, we're ready to go. So I think it would be a good thing, but as you know, everyone has to contribute to it. Everyone has to be on board.
Thank you, Susan. That's excellent. Let's see. Next, I'm going to go over to Sean. Sean, how are you doing? How are things faring in the hotel accommodation sector?
Me personally, I'm doing fine. Thank you, Brian. Let me start maybe with just some facts for you. We just got the national market report on from CBRE on the destination. So August, which is typically our strongest month, would run our highest rate and approximately 90% occupancy in the marketplace has been our history. We were down 37 points in occupancy, which is, you know, over 40%, and nearly down $40 in rate, which is about 23% roughly of what our rate would be. So to understand that, that means we essentially sucked all the profit out of August. August being the month where a lot of us stock away money for a tough winter season, it'll be very difficult for the hotel sector this fall. Year to date, we're down about 50%. So the little bit of recovery we felt in July, August, and certainly I think September will be a similar month to August. We saw, at least I saw, and some of my colleagues were commenting that they saw a lot of travel, a lot of leisure travel in September that sort of kept them afloat. I think we'll see similar numbers to what we saw in August, but that won't be what a typical September would be. Certainly feeling the fewer students in the marketplace and parents therefore in the marketplace. And I'm sure restaurants, I'm sure Tim will comment on that. We're all feeling that. So I'm not particularly optimistic at this point. I was feeling quite good mid-September about where bookings were. The last 10 days since the announcements, particularly in Montreal, Toronto, and Ottawa, which are our primary feeder markets, have caused a tremendous amount of cancellation. And, you know, when I say a tremendous amount, I've lost 100 room nights just for the month of October. So, you know, we're talking in the neighborhood of about 40K gone alone. I'm hearing similar stories and obviously magnified at some of the larger hotels. Many of the hotels are never really fully opened. Many hotels are considering whether or not they will remain open in full or in part as we go forward into the winter. I think what Susan said applies to our sector. We're very unsure. We simply do not know what tomorrow will hold. Waiting for the other shoe to drop is certainly how I feel as an owner. You know, we're trying to hang on to the things that we've got. I'm very concerned about the workforce in our sector. We went through one situation where a great number of them needed to leave the workplace and were at home. I'm fearing that we're going to do that again, not necessarily because of health concerns in the same way, because I think, you know, in Kingston, we're very fortunate. I just think the business isn't there to employ them. And I'm not sure how resilient, I mean, it's a very resilient group of people, but I'm not sure how resilient we can be with these ebbs and starts and continuing to keep people attracted. So it's a tough situation for us. You know, particularly the last 10, 12 days have been very concerning. The calls I'm on with others are speaking a similar tale to what I'm personally experiencing in my own business. And I'm very, very concerned. And I don't frankly know where support can come from external forces for the situation that we're in. For us, it's about putting heads in beds and taking great care of people. And I will tell you that I really appreciate, I'm sure I see it on the agenda. Megan's going to talk to you a little bit about what's been developed. I think it's wonderful. And I think they're legacy pieces that we will do regardless of what situation we're in. My concern is can we drive enough business Sunday through Thursday nights to keep everybody open?
No, I hear you. Thank you. As you say, tough situation. And I think we need to be clear-eyed about that. So we'll discuss more with the tourism working group update shortly. So thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Next, I'm going to go to Dave. Dave, good to see you. Would love to get your perspective and what you're hearing on the ground from the labor side.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of different employees in a lot of different workplaces and sectors across the city. And normally I'm a big critic when it comes to employers, but I've been pleasantly surprised on how employers have stepped up during this pandemic and have come up with unique ways to protect their employees. And I think it's starting to show when it comes to customer confidence also in a lot of workplaces. There still is a lot of apprehension going into the second wave, kind of. Things kind of cooled off for a while. We've been doing very well in Kingston, but now that our numbers are starting to come up a bit, there is a little bit more apprehension in the last couple of weeks, especially in the service industry and in restaurants and retail. One of the things that I hope that employers do now that they've got a lot of the protections in place with masks and plexiglass and all the things that they put in place to protect the employees is to pivot and start focusing on the mental health of their employees. I think that's very important, especially with the increased workloads that have been starting to happen into the second wave. In healthcare, there's been a very big increase in workload. When the start of the pandemic hit, a lot of the call volumes, a lot of the patients in hospital, those numbers actually went down. And now those numbers are starting to climb up. So there is definitely an increased workload in healthcare professions across the city. So I'm hoping that employers actually are cognitive of that and start and focus on the mental health of employees, because it's important in the long term. I think that's it. I'm really pleasantly surprised on how employers have stepped up and how actually employees have stepped up too and met the challenge across the city.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, great comments aligning with what Ian had shared as well on the mental health front. So that's really good feedback. Thank you. Tim, I think we'll go to you next. Give us, we appreciate just kind of a lens about where the restaurant sector is at right now.
Sure, I'd probably be echoing a lot of what others have already said. Just in terms of this summer, we did enjoy a nice blip of good business. Thanks, of course, in part to the Love Kingston marketplace. It benefited a lot of restaurants. Unfortunately, some it wasn't able to, but that was just the way it is, that didn't have patio expansions, etc. But when you look at our year-to-date sales, it just doesn't come close to even making up for having to be closed for those 3 months. So I think for us and most people, we're still, down 30, 40, 50% on the year, which is really, really difficult to come back from when you're heading into your slowest season. So that being said, I echo Sean that we're really pleased that the city, Tourism Kingston and BIA are going to continue the Love Kingston marketplace through the fall and winter. But it's just the climate and the provincial climate are there people going to be traveling anyway? And that's the big fear, because most of the messaging that I guess we see is coming from the province rather than locally. And that's, the rules in Toronto. I'm very happy to hear that we're going to try to push and lobby for a regional approach. And I hope we can get somewhere with that because it is so different. The case counts in Kingston are still relatively low. And there's, the whole daily case count fear. We're testing 5 times as many people as we did in the spring. So they're bound to be higher. So there is some relevance to that as well in terms of percentages. But that, regardless of how you try to argue the messaging, the perception is what matters in terms of consumers and how they're going to spend. And I think right now there is definitely a perception of nervousness. We've just now seen a huge drop, just as Sean was referencing to over the past couple of weeks, just since all of the second wave information is getting out there. So yeah, it feels like we're headed back into the dark instead of seeing a lot of light ahead. The bits of light that we're seeing are the rent program. I have also heard there was an article in the Globe. They didn't give any names or details, but saying yes, that there is talk of rebooting that program, making it retroactive to October 1st, but making it tenant driven rather than landlord driven, which I think will be really helpful. The other good news that we don't have details on, but is that the CEWS, the wage subsidy, will be extended into next summer. Don't know how that's exactly, they've revamped that program. It's still working well for us, and hopefully, I know a lot of people can't take advantage of it, but at least that's a promising signal as well. I think there seems to be recognition from the levels of government that this is a long-term thing, much longer than anyone had anticipated. Restaurants, again, I'll echo what Abba had to say in terms of the regional thing. I think a lot of people locally are going to be really hurt by the 11 p.m. closure. You know, specifically restaurants, they're more like pub-like or bar-like. I know that the larger restaurants up in the university district are in serious trouble. So yeah, I wish I could be here being totally positive, but we've got to face reality, and you know, I don't know how we build consumer confidence when all the messaging is so dire from our various levels of government. I know restaurants are doing a great job, and we have no issues with customers obeying the rules. Our staff feel comfortable. It's just we need people. And that's about it for me.
Thanks, Tim. Again, great feedback, and appreciate the clear-eyed analysis of what's going well and at the same time where the challenges are, for sure. That's very useful. Dan, I'm going to go to you next. How's the construction sector holding up these days?
You know, waiting for the next shoe to drop has been an interesting comment. How dynamic the landscape seems to be is also what we have the same issues. We've started to feel in the last couple of weeks some real supply chain issues, things like reinforcing steel to build concrete structures. There's a shortage of reinforcing steel, cement powder to make ready mix concrete. I was talking to a colleague in Ottawa on the weekend, and he said that they're actually being rationed cement powder, which we need some concrete for one of our projects. And my guy told me yesterday that we're 4 days out from getting a load of ready mix. We're used to 4 hours, so the impact on our schedule is significant. So the supply chain issues seem to be making their way down to us grassroots people. The change in the health unit's rules as it relates to if you're feeling sick, stay home. So we have, it's fall, so we have we work outside, so we're exposed to the elements. We get rainy days like we've had a couple of this week. We get 3 sniffles. We've averaged 10% of our workforce off every day this week. Not because they're direly sick, but because they have some sniffles, and the cold flu-like symptoms are similar enough to COVID that the rules are you stay home, and we're trying to be as lean as we can. And then when 10% of your folks are home, it's made that just an incredible challenge. Some good news: the CEWS wage subsidy has been a huge benefit. I echo Tim's comments about that. We are not going to get to 50% of last year's revenues. That's how significant our issue is. So CEWS has been a big part for us. An interesting spin, though, our business is 90% competitive bidding, and it feels like some of our competitors are actually factoring the wage subsidy into their pricing. Which is a road to no place, but that's what it feels like, because the prices are it's like a race to the bottom to find to get work. So that's been an interesting byproduct, and it's tough. We don't have the same issues that the personal health care that Abba talk about, or the hotels do, or the restaurants do, or the malls do. But from a different aspect, it's just as ugly a struggle. It really, really is. And when we're 50% of the revenue so far, and we need to get some groceries on the shelves as as Tim and Sean talked about, to survive the winter. Boy, the next 6 months is kind of bleak.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, Ian, go ahead.
Just a quick point. I know I wish I could offer silver bullets that help give big answers for all the industries, but you know, when I hear different needs and I know of something that might be available in the local community, Dan, I'll follow up with you. I just wanted to remind people of the Friends Feeding Friends program that was in Kingston. And for anyone that wasn't familiar with it, the Davies Charitable Foundation partnered with Loblaws to raise $500,000 to give $100 gift cards to employees in Kingston in need for no frills. And the last time I checked, they still had quite a bit of money available in that. I'll double check with the Davies Charitable Foundation. They partnered with the food bank to provide, and No Frills, to provide these gift cards. So speaking to the comment of putting food on tables and groceries in the refrigerators, it's as simple as an employer can go online and register their employees. It's completely anonymous. And that employee gets an email that basically says, hey, there's a $100 gift card waiting for you at No Frills, go pick it up. So if you do have, whether it's kitchen staff in a restaurant, whether it's hotel staff, or construction staff, if there are people that you think would benefit from $100 in groceries, Newer just posted the link there. It's as easy as putting their basic information down and they get $100 worth of groceries. And if I know anything about shopping at No Frills, $100 goes a long way in groceries at No Frills. So just wanted to say that the last thing we want to see is people not being able to have food in their fridges. So it was an awesome program that was generated by some local philanthropists, and I want to make sure that that gets utilized.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, that's a great reminder for sure. It's been a great program. Dan, my only other question for you is, do you see any change to the construction season, just given the conditions, either shorter or longer? I mean, I know it's often weather related, but I mean, sometimes there can be attempts to try to shift. Do you see any changes to the construction season?
You know, out of sheer necessity, I wouldn't be surprised that it'll be extended. The reality is, when the pricing has gotten beat up so as much as it has, and the cost to work in the difficult season in the fall and winter and spring are increased, the two lines run apart, and it genuinely doesn't make any sense. It's like Sean's comment about having 30% occupancy. Like how long do you survive that storm? You know, and you're kind of better off to lock the doors and deal with the 15% loss than you are the 30% loss. So I expect that out of necessity, some folks are going to continue to try to work on from a purely cash flow standpoint, but from a business model standpoint, I'm afraid that it never made much sense to try to work in the winter, and I think it makes less sense now.
No, thank you. That's very helpful. Trish, last but not least, how are things going in the cultural services sector?
Well, we've been meeting, and just to remind everybody, the arts and cultural industry within Kingston includes the arts organizations, cultural heritage organizations, and independent artists. And we've been focusing our attention on the two areas: what to do during the pandemic for artists, and then how to create the recovery. So there's those two aspects, and it's really dire for artists. Their work has disappeared, and it's scary and frightening. And I have to say how wonderful the artistic community has been to try to help each other. So I'll go through just some of the recommendations we're putting forward of creating a central hub for independent artists and arts organizations in terms of funding. And we're talking to the wonderful Danica Lockheed at Cultural Services, who's part of the group, and the KAC. And we're also, in terms of the recovery and education needed to go into that multi-platform world, we're going to be developing professional development seminars to get people really up and running on multi-platform artistic delivery. And we've got a lot of experts. In fact, Kingston has been attracting a lot of national attention to what's happening at the Full Day Festival and the Isabel, and a number of organizations. The TET Center has been doing a spectacular job. So we're going to be putting together these seminars so that we can get everybody up and running. And we're, in terms of the short-term relief, because of the really dire situation for artists, we're trying to use our imagination in terms of creating an artist relief fund and a public and private partnership so that we can fundraise and possibly work with the Kingston Community Foundation to fundraise to have relief funds for artists, because it is scary. And, you know, to the we talked about groceries on shelves, this is what we're talking about. And so how, at this point, we're trying to figure out what that recommendation would look like and what our actions need to be. But you've got a really committed art sector who are really caring about each other and helping each other. The other thing that we're doing in terms of a central source of resources for artists is there's a number of organizations such as the Isabel and the Grand Theater and the TED Center that are creating these artist residencies and saying, what can we do during the pandemic? And we're creating these artist residency, recording and filming and arts education online, and that artists can apply for that and be able to create product, but also earn some money at the same time. So having that central source of opportunities within the art sector this time is important. We're also talking to the city and the Ontario Arts Council about calculating the economic impact of the artists, because we have a very large economic impact beyond just the arts performance in terms of related sectors such as retail and the hotel industry. So to actually get those numbers so that we've got that model, and there is a Canadian Heritage model. So we're going to be working on that. And in terms of the consumer and community confidence, that we're looking at market research. I know the Grand is doing market research on people's willingness to return. The Isabel is already open with performances up to 50 people, and getting market research after every single performance with all our COVID protocol. And there's industry market research on what's going to happen. And we have somebody on our team, Katie Littlejohn, who is working with the Creative Cities of Canada, and she was doing a presentation on what other cities are doing. So we're gathering some best practices and ideas from other cities. And in these giant times, we're always trying to find the answer, but sometimes it's actually trying to define the question for which we need the answer. So we're generating very large questions in terms of the future of the arts and what we need to do in order to thrive in the future of the arts in a multi-platform world. But it's everybody has been amazing, but the situation for independent artists is really dire. It just is.
Trish, I think that's a great description of the size of the challenges and yet people working together. I mean, I think that's got to be
really beautiful. This collaboration is beautiful, what's happening.
For sure. And you know what, I think it's great to see that in the arts sector, but just even, you know, getting the community working together as we face these challenges. I think that's just got to be a key approach. And that is ultimately one of our advantages as a community about how we can do that. You know, we're advocating, you know, for what the province and the federal government can do, but also continue to put our heads together about what we can do at a community level. And I think that actually translates well into our next update. So we have Megan here from Tourism Kingston. I know the Tourism Working Group has been doing some great stuff, trying to see what we can do to leverage what we can do in a community to be able to help as best we can. So Megan, maybe I'll pass it over to you. If you can provide an update for the group, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Good morning, everybody. So we do have a slide deck. I think that's the quickest way to give an update. So many of you alluded on this call already to our ability to work together as a subcommittee of this task force to talk about seasonally, basically, how we can incentivize travel, abiding by all of the restrictions and support, you know, small business. And so this is citywide. How can we make an impact? So if you could just, Brittany or Nor, just start the screen share. Thank you. So as Tim and Sean touched on, the Love Kingston Marketplace with lots of collaboration went very, very well. I think as good as it could have been, quite frankly, from March through to September. Then we started our fall programming. We had to scale back. We were doing too good of a job, quite frankly. And so in collaboration with public health, we were asked to kind of scale back some of the things we were doing because there was so much interest, mainly in and around the programming at Spring Market Square. So we've taken that into consideration. And so for winter, understanding, next screen, please, what we can do. So we always base what we're doing in actual real live data. So we actually surveyed folks in the city, not just visitors, but actual residents, to see what they would enjoy, because quite frankly, depending on the type of travel that is allowed, spanning from kind of mid-November on to the end of March, we want to make sure that we're providing programming that really resonates with locals and non-locals. And so the community spoke. Obviously, this is some data just to suggest that, you know, folks are looking for local travel, mainly in the right lower quadrant is where you kind of want to look. So people are looking for culinary activities. They're looking for holiday markets. They're looking for live music. They're looking for outdoor wintertime activities. And some form of guided tour, or basically an experience about the place. Next slide, please. So with that being said, just understanding that there is also some data coming down from Destination Ontario, actually. And so, you know, it's important for the group just flagging that Ontario, generally, Ontarians feel safe when thinking about traveling to nearby communities. 74% actually do. So that gives us a bit of hope. They feel safe within their own province. They don't necessarily feel safe leaving out of province. And if they were allowed at this point, they probably would not travel, even if there was kind of the thinking that they could, into international destinations. So what does that mean for us? Next slide. That just really means that our city can be wrapped in love, as it was from the beginning of March onward. And so this is actually a structure that you'll see erected in November in the fountain in Confederation Basin. So it's not just an image you're seeing on a screen right now. So we're really staying with that theme of love, understanding that regional travel will still be, hopefully, and I am hopeful that it'll be enough to be able to see some circulation of economic impact in the, you know, Q3, Q4, and then on to Q1 of 2021. Next slide. So what does that look like? So obviously partnership is key, and looking kind of at that European feel, we definitely have a historic downtown. We actually have an illumination system that's already built into City Hall. We have lots of lighting configurations. And so we're really gonna, I think someone talked about, you know, the beacon of light on this call already. So that's kind of the theme that we're going with. It's not, you know, any one specific theme. It's just lights all the way down Princess Street through Springer Market Square into Confederation Basin, having some impact in terms of, next slide, being able to experience what Kingston is with some animation. And so looking at making sure that obviously Springer Market Square, the rink will be erected once again, just making sure that there's more of a sense of wonder and more of a sense of people wanting to come down and look at these types of experiences and activities. Next. So just making sure that, next slide, Brittany, just making sure that what you're seeing now, and we can just go through these quickly, is just making sure that the downtown specifically and out through the region is illuminated in these types of animation pieces that we're investing in. And Brittany can just go through these fairly quickly, but just making sure that you understand that we are putting you know, an investment in a look and a feel. So the Love Kingston, not just extending that all the way through the outdoor animation, but indoor as well. We learned from the Briar that a sense of community and kind of enveloping that into a thematic works really well for our community. And so not unlike anything that we did for a Briar that had, you know, significant economic impact, just making sure that throughout any kind of retail or other service in and amongst all our small businesses and large businesses, quite frankly, that are consumer facing, that we have this thematic of Love Kingston in the winter. We're looking at hanging heart lights for those local businesses that are willing in the front windows. And this is East End, West End, you know, downtown. So this is throughout the community. You know, DBIA obviously does a very good programming throughout the winter months. There won't be a Feb Fest, as it were, We're really just looking at kind of this winter fest throughout November to March. So making sure that some of these, as we're allowed to work with public health on pieces, carolers, wagon rides, music, a festival of lights component, just really making sure that that you know, is elevated. And I would, for the arts piece, I just want to stop here. So we're looking at all of the unoccupied storefronts downtown specifically now, working with our cultural services in the city to hire local artists to paint murals, if you will, their own artwork through these. So, you know, window displays in a holiday time are very attractive to locals and non-locals. And so knowing that, you could, you know, basically have a little tour walking through the downtown, and instead of seeing, you know, sort of boarded up windows, you're going to see these beautiful pieces of art. Next slide. Fort Henry, we're working with St. Lawrence Parks Commission to allow for some sort of tobogganing experience if we do get snow. That's not at your own risk. It's actually permitted and encouraged, so that's positive. And then giving back. So we're working with our local hotel sector to try to donate back to our community. So for every stay, a portion of that stay would be donated to a charity here in Kingston. Culinary is very important. Obviously, we did our research. We know that. So we're working on nothing like Tim and, you know, thoughtful partners in the community haven't done before. A Snowlicious menu. Winterlicious, we know, has done wonders for the culinary components in Toronto. Next slide. So we're going to just take advantage of the experience working with Natalie, who's featured here on this slide. She really is you know, a leader in the culinary industry. So she's going to help us curate these type of menus that are a call to action to go support our local restaurants specifically during this time. Outdoor winter experiences. I mean, I've touched on this, just making sure, you know, as things come online, like the market wing of City Hall with their Indigenous exhibition, that's, you know, something that we can add as a new experience. And then just making sure our marketing is very reactive and pivots to where we need to be. So, you know, if we're taking a very regional approach, that's what we do. Our Together at Home is actually our program that and I take no credit for this. It was the team at Tourism Kingston architect back through March, kind of ending to when we started to get out of phase 3. It's kind of award winning now. We supported you know, many artists with the ability to share what they were doing at home to a live audience. So we're doing the same type of thing through the holidays as well. I'm just creating great content to share. And then working with our local Fly GTA partnership, you know, it's great to have an airline coming into Kingston. And so, you know, just working on all of the new assets that we have to kind of create these love letters to Kingston. And then gift giving guide, and Susan, that's where we could maybe discuss. So, you know, local gift giving guides, trying to circulate people in need periods, especially at the mall, as you pointed out. So making sure that maybe that holiday gift guide as it relates to, you know, a certain demographic where we would encourage them to shop that 11 to 2 o'clock stream so that, you know, folks could go and work that do traditionally work a 9 to 5, they could kind of maybe ease into those later shopping hours. So I think it's all in the creation of the marketing and the communication. So looking to work with partners to make sure that that's really clear. And I think that's it.
Thanks, Megan. It was awesome. Awesome. It's great to see some of the initiatives that are being worked on here. I would love to open up the floor to questions or feedback that anyone has. Trish, yeah, go ahead.
Congratulations. This is so filled with action. It's just fantastic. You're doing so much great work in Kingston. I'm just wondering on the inbound, outbound component that I know, for instance, at the Isabel, we're doing high fidelity broadcasts and we're working with Queen's alumni to get that, you know, across Canada, around the world. Is there anything the arts can do in terms of actually broadcasting the great activities that are happening in Kingston to the outside world? And how can the arts help? Because there's significant programming happening right now that can be outbound and can be branded with Love Kingston.
Yeah, I think that's great, Tricia. I think maybe yourself, Allison, and I can talk offline. And I know Jenna from your team, she is on our working group, and she said some great suggestions as well. So absolutely, I think there's a lot of collaboration that could happen there that we can definitely
whatever we can do to help you, because it's great work you're doing.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Awesome. Any other thoughts, feedback, comments, or questions for Megan? Dave, yeah, go ahead.
Has there been any consideration of marketing some of the larger corporations within the city? I'm thinking. So my employer every year has a employee appreciation week or day. That usually you get a card thanking you for everything you've done in the year, and you're usually provided with some sort of gift. Usually it's a trinket or something. This year, our employer had a great idea with giving a card and a gift card to local businesses. So I just wonder if there's any kind of plan on marketing some of these larger corporations to kind of support the smaller businesses within our community.
Yeah, I think Nor and Ian could take that offline, Dave, and we could talk about that, because I think those stories are, you know, what ECDEV has been working on with the localized Love Kingston, and we kind of speak to a more external market. But I think those are exactly the stories that internally we would align with Donna and her team on. So I think Ian and I could talk to you offline about that for sure.
Michelle, did you want to jump in there? Go ahead.
Just wanted to say that we have several staff and committees working on some holiday promotions that could fit exactly with that, and definitely would dovetail with anything the tourism working group is working on, as well as ECDEV, et cetera, et cetera. So just wanted to say that out loud.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle, for jumping in on that. Good. Any other comments or questions? Great. Megan, thanks again for that presentation. Again, really great stuff, and look forward to continuing that community collaboration for sure. Awesome. Our last item on the agenda relates a little bit more to the work we've done in putting together our priorities, our 4 priorities over the coming months. As I had said at the beginning of the meeting, they've been very well received, certainly by council, but also by the community as a whole. And so, Craig, I think you have an update with respect to the Queen's PhD Community Initiative.
Yes, thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm not sure whether everybody is familiar with the Queen's PhD Community Initiative program. It's actually entering its 5th year. It's a program it's actually very exciting. Really an amazing way to connect the PhD students at Queen's who often, I guess because of the intensity of their work, sort of get in the bubble of Queen's and their specific field of study. This is an opportunity to engage the community and sort of reach out, provide expertise, and certainly give them an opportunity to understand the Kingston community better. It's the City of Kingston. My office has actually participated 3 times with in past years. The PhDs you're matched with come from a spectrum of fields of study. So you're getting a really interesting sort of cross-section of expertise. One of the concerns in my discussions with Queen's has been to try and make sure that the pandemic doesn't interrupt or sort of slow down the success of this program. So in our discussions, I pitched to them the suggestion that we would potentially use the priorities of this group, of the economic recovery team, as sort of a basis to appeal to the students. In the past, there was a big sort of public event where organizations could come in and pitch their ideas, and students and the organizations would match. Again, not very doable with social distancing. So the pitch was very well received. There were, I think, more than 30 PhD students that participated in a session I held, and happy to report that actually 4 teams have come forward to participate. Two groups are they're interested in the community conference confidence subject. One around the workforce, and another one around empowering vulnerable groups to access opportunity. So what we're planning to do is match those groups up with the working groups as another resource. I know in the past, in my experience, we've used the students we've engaged them, and they've done some amazing survey work, some literature reviews in terms of best practices. They have amazing skills. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we can harness their capacity. But they were very passionate about their desire to help the community, including the businesses. So as we start to build out again, it's probably mostly my responsibility for the working groups. We'll get those up and going within the next week or two. And we'll get connected to these student teams and put them to good work. So just wanted to provide that briefing to the group, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Craig. That sounds great. Great example, being able to tap into some creative energy in our community to be able to help and pull more community resources into what we want to accomplish as a team. Are there any questions or comments from the group on that? So we'll be following up again as we start to continue to push forward the individual working groups. And so if you're part of that group, you'll be able to connect with that team and be able to give them that perspective that they need in terms of their work. That's great.
Worship, I wonder, while I still have the floor, if I can put in a plug. Some of you may be aware that the great work that we're doing together on economic recovery, there's also a parallel activity between the city and Kingston Economic Development around integrated economic development strategy, sort of a more medium or longer term. That strategy development work is ongoing. It's going to be coming back to council in December. We currently have a survey that is open, and I wanted to just tell you before I emailed you the link to the survey. We would very much value your input into the strategy. If you want to share it with your members, please feel free to do that. The more responses we get, the better. The more insights we get, the more we're happy to hear and steal any bright ideas that others might have. This is a collaborative. It's no accident that the word integrated is included. This is not just Kingston Economic Development strategy. It's all of our strategies, including Queens and St. Lawrence, business, labor. This is what's going to drive our economy in the longer term. So would be very grateful for all of you to participate in that survey.
Great, Craig, thank you. Yes, and I'll just echo that. Would love to get feedback from this group on that medium to longer term direction that we want to take things. Absolutely. Is there any other business, any other issues, or anything else that people wanted to raise at this point? Again, I really appreciate all the great feedback from everybody this morning. Just a last call if there's anything else. If not, thank you again for your time, everybody. Thank you for all the great input you've given. We're going to take away a lot. I've got a big, long list of notes here that I've been taking throughout this morning. So we'll work away on that. Feel free to reach out at any time if there's other additional info or insight that you want to provide. Obviously, we'll have our next KERT meeting next month, but we'll be pushing forward the working group exercises and initiatives as well. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, everybody. I guess with that, we'll end here and hope everyone has a great day and look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.